Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we look at the whiskeys to look out for the month of July. And there's some big ones. Run that video. Alright then folks, before we get into today's video, if you haven't already, go and check out the Whiskey Cove's website, thewhiskeycove.square.site, where you can find some excellent premium Whiskey Cove glasses at rock bottom prices. And they're engraved with the Whiskey Cove logo, which is just fantastic. An excellent way for you folks out there to support the channel. But if you're looking for other ways to support, consider Patreon and consider just subscribing, liking and commenting to the channel. I appreciate every single one. With that being said, today's episode is all about the whiskeys to look out for the month of July. We like to do these videos monthly because it's an excellent way to put some whiskeys on your folks' radar at home that you might not be thinking about right now, and also maybe some other unique ones that you might not typically go for, but you might just like the sound of things. And as usual, some of the whiskeys do get pushed back a month or so definitely watch a few other ones leading up to this, like the May and the June ones, so you might see some other whiskeys that are coming out for the month of July. With that being said, we do have some pretty good whiskey getting released this month, so we'll talk all about that as well. And we'll also have some honorable mentions at the end, so just make sure you stick around for those too. So with that being said, let's stop the talking and let's get into some of these whiskeys to look out for the month of July. And first up, wow, we're gonna go straight in with one of these big boys, and that is Russell's Reserve 13. Yes, it is back for another year. This is the third year in it. I guess since it started back 2 years ago. So I've had both the first release and the second release. The first release was much better than the second. I'm not saying the second was necessarily bad, it just didn't stack up to the first one. So it will be interesting to see how the third one tastes. So as you're watching this video towards the back end of June here, they did just do a release on their Russell's Reserve, through I think it's like the Whiskey Bar or something like that. It was through the Russell's Reserve actual website, and they released some bottles in our Father's Day, and they were selling them for $150, which that is because that is the new MSRP on this whiskey. $150. Used to be like $80, $90, but yes, they have kicked it up. Being owned by Campari, the Campari Group, which is a bigger group which owns some brands like Sky Vodka, Grand Marnier, Aperol. Like, I was kind of expecting this. That's the way the single Rick House went, and that's what it kind of feels like in whiskey lately. And there's a little bit of a theme with some of that stuff in today's episode. But yes, it is gone up in price to $150. That is a considerable price upgrade. But with that being said, it probably is maybe worth the value, depending on how good the whiskey tastes in the bottle. So this year's edition, I believe, is 57.4% or 114.8 proof. So yes, they put out a small allocation for Father's Day, but you should also see them start hitting the shelves here in July, if you're lucky enough to find them. Again, a pretty allocated whiskey. Hopefully that they're ramping up production every year so they're able to bring more bottles out to you folks at home. So that was the Russell's Reserve, aged 13 years. Next up, and we are going down to Texas, and that is because we are going to TX Bourbon. So they are they're putting out a new release. This is going to be their single barrel bottled in bond release, and this is going to be aged at least 4 years. It wasn't age stated, but being bottled in bond, we know it's at least 4 years. And we show the bottle on the screen here. Has a cool little medallion there, and as you can see, it says bottled in bond there. TX single barrel. So like most single barrels, there will be some variants there as well. So this is actually owned by Pernod Ricard Umbrella, which they took over TX Whiskey in 2019. Another big global kind of group taking over a whiskey brand here in America. So other brands that they own is like Havana Club, even Jameson Whiskey that they own, Absolute Vodka, and then Jefferson, so like Jefferson's Ocean, that sort of stuff. They also own them as well. However, the price on this isn't too much. I think it's an affordable bottle to take a stab at for something different. If you haven't tried Texas whiskey, it's quite spicy, it's quite sweet. It balances out some of those two flavors very well. I suggest you have to try it if you haven't tried Texas whiskey already. And TX Bourbon is a big fan of the folks over in the whiskey tribe. They seem to like TX whiskey a lot there as well. So 50% ABV or 100 proof. The price of this bottle is going $50. So I think that's worth a stab of pretty much anybody's money. That is TX Bourbon single barrel bottled in bond. Next up, and we go back to Kentucky, and that is because we're going to the Woodford Reserve Distillery. So they are back with the third, I think it's the third or maybe even fourth release now of the batch proof bourbon. So they've had a few other ones. The ABV has varied, I think like 118, 126, and the highest I believe was 113. So I think this is the fourth one of that series. So this one is coming in at 124.7 proof or 62.35% ABV. These seem to be there or therearound when they first drop. As the year goes on, usually you can't find them. But usually when they first drop, you'll see them sitting on shelves or maybe in some like specialty area where they keep that high and expensive whiskey. So maybe look, if you're interested in the Woodford Reserve Batch Proof, then maybe look in those sort of areas at liquor stores. So the MSRP on this has kind of more or less stayed the same this year. $130 to $150, depending on what state you're in. That can vary. I've seen them in Kentucky for about 130, but then anytime it comes to Colorado, it seems to kick up to 150. And that's before some retailers put up an extra mark on it. I've heard good and bad things about the batch proof. I haven't specifically tried it myself, just from the information that I've gathered from other people. I can't give you my own credible review on it, but I hear mixed things about it. And when it comes to $130, $150 bottle of whiskey, it needs to be pretty good. So I guess, you know, there's only one way we can find out. Maybe we buy this. I probably won't be buying it myself, but I know some folks at home definitely do like to get the Woodford Reserve batch proofs. So I'm moving from Kentucky down to Tennessee, and we're going to the Jack Daniel's distillery. So what are the folks down at Jack Daniel's concocting this time? Well, they're going in a little bit of a unique, no, I would say unique direction, because Buffalo Trace have been doing this a while. So Jack Daniel's they're putting out a straight Tennessee whiskey, and then they're finishing an añejo tequila barrels. So this just goes on to say the Tennessee whiskey finished in añejo tequila barrels, which marries the flavor of agave and oak. So the sweetness of oak and the sweetness of agave, and then kind of like the dry and spiciness of oak there as well. So this is going to be part of the distillery series, but some of the distillery series occasionally does make it around the US. I was able to acquire a couple of the other Jack Daniel's distillery series that they did, like the high maple toasts and the high maple oak editions that they did. Would I go out and grab one of these? Probably not. I don't particularly like my whiskey and tequila together. It's just not my style, but I know for some people it is, and usually Jack Daniel's can always put out excellent products, so depending on price, maybe I might, if I hear that it's good, go for this. This is going to be coming in at 45% ABV or 90 proof, little on the lower side there. At first, our well-traveled barrels aged Jack Daniel's. Then they matured añejo tequila in Mexico before returning home to finish this fine Tennessee whiskey. Aromas of sweet citrus, light oak, and on the nose with a taste of brown sugar and dried spices, crowned by notes of aged tequila mingle with a Tennessee whiskey sweetness. So like I was saying, Buffalo Trace used to do these. I think they might have stopped doing these now, but you might be able to still find some bottles. I think they did like some tequila finished in like the Jack Daniel's Buffalo Trace Antique Collection barrels. So it's kind of similar to this, but the Jack Daniel's have kind of flipped it. They're doing whiskey finished in tequila barrels, where Buffalo Trace did it the other way. They did tequila finished in some of their premium whiskey barrels. Maybe just more of a marketing thing from Buffalo Trace. But like I said, if I see this, I might pick it up. Not really my style, but you never know. Wow, so that was Jack Daniel's Distillery Series, straight Tennessee whiskey finishing añejo tequila barrels. Next up, and we have a really funky label from the folks over there at WhistlePig. I'll throw that on the screen for you folks at home there. So this is their Sun Toasted from 91.4 million miles away summer stock whiskey in collaboration with Pit Viper. This is a limited edition, and this is this is 86 proof and 43% alcohol by volume, and it's going to be a 750 milliliter bottle. So WhistlePig are celebrating achieving a 100% solar panel at the distillery, and they wanted to do a collaboration with someone in honor of this. So they picked out a sunglasses brand to do that, which Pit Viper up. Don't know too much about Pit Viper. They make glasses. You can go to check out their website. They're a little bit funky, like this label here. And then it goes on to say that this whiskey is a blend of rye and wheat whiskeys. So it's going to be a combination of the two. It doesn't say anything about bourbon. Obviously, WhistlePig known for their rye whiskeys there. And I looked up the price, and it's actually going to be around about $60, which is on the cheaper side for WhistlePig. Personally, I'm not necessarily a WhistlePig fan. I've had some of their aged rye stuff, which is pretty good. But when it comes to like their Traeger stuff or like their maple stuff, it gets a little bit funky, and I feel like it's maybe not for me. It might be for you folks at home, but just personally, it's not kind of for me. And like I said, it's a pretty cool collaboration with a sunglass company. It doesn't really make sense if you ask me, but the label looks pretty fantastic there. So that was WhistlePig Summer Stock Whiskey. And then lastly, in terms of the main whiskeys here before the honorable mentions, we are going back down to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky to be specific, and we're going to Old Forester, because Old Forester are introducing a new whiskey, and it is an exciting one, and this is pretty big news coming out of there. This is the Whiskey Row Series 1924 10-year-old. So yes, this is going to be probably hard to get in the beginning. I'm hoping that with great success, it says it's part of the Whiskey Row series, with great success they might try to get it into the core lineup here. So what is the 1924 Old Forester release? So like I said, this is a 10-year-old whiskey. This is, if you look at the front label here, a Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. On the label it says, in 1924, Owsley Brown took barrels of whiskey with different mash tills to a warehouse on Howard Street in Louisville, Kentucky. Bottled them at Old Forester, and this 10-year expression honors the 100th anniversary of this occasion. And we'll quickly look at the back label here. This whiskey is distilled by us only, and we are responsible for its richness and fine quality. Its elegant flavor is solely due to the original fineness developed with care. There is nothing better in this market. Quite a claim, but usually what Old Forester do kind of say a blurb like that on the back. So this is a 10-year whiskey coming in at 100% proof or 50% ABV. Like I said, expect this to be pretty highly allocated for the most part, because most of the stuff that comes out of Old Forester, like the Whiskey Row series or the Colorado, or the Birthday Bourbon, is quite expensive and quite hard to get, and expect that the same. But I'm hoping they have really great success with this. They want to make it more of a full-time thing, or maybe even ramp up some of those years like Jack Daniels is doing, because Jack Daniels is owned by Brown-Forman, and so is Old Forester as well. So if they have similar ideas, it would make complete sense. Maybe we might see like a 10, a 15, or 12, or an 18, or 21. That would be really cool. So let's talk about some honorable mentions here. And Low's Whiskey in Colorado, out of Denver, Colorado, are back with a house bottled in bond batch 5. This is 7 years old and has a price of $80, so pretty affordable for a 7-year craft distillery release. This is, like I said, bottled in bonds of 50% ABV or 100 proof. You can get this at lowswhiskey.com, and like I said, I think for $80 you're getting really good value for money. And if you know anything about Low's Whiskey in Denver, you know that they're pretty, when it comes to the science behind whiskey, they're pretty much on top of this stuff. So if you haven't tried Low's, you definitely need to try them, because they make some really well refined products out there. Next up is Aberfeldy 15-year Napa Valley wine cask. This is a Highland single malt, aged 15 years and 43% ABV or 86 proof. This is retailing around $70, and it's finished in Cabernet Sauvignon barrels from the Napa Valley for between 4 and 5 months. So if you like your single malts and you like your Highland scotches, then this might be for you. That offers a different sort of finish than maybe what you're used to, like an Oloroso or bourbon barrel. And then lastly, sticking with single malts, but sticking with going to American single malts, and this is a Westland American single malt, Calera Edition 3. This is made out of Washington, and this is a 50% ABV or 100 proof. There was only ever 4,629 bottles made, so if you like your American single malt and you like them a little bit on the pricey side, then this bottle might be for you there. This is going to retail around about $150. American single malts, for whatever reason, always seem to be more in price than Scottish single malts, given that Scotch has to come over here and is up against some heavy tax tariffs. But the prices for American single malt haven't come down too much. That being said, there was one out recently, the Yellowstone single malt, and that wasn't too expensive. That was like $50-$60, which I still recommend if you want to get into American single malts to try that whiskey first, because it's affordable and you won't waste so much money with that. So that is everything we have today. There wasn't too much going on in terms terms of depth, the amount of stuff, but some really interesting bottles out there. Russell's Reserve 13, the Woodford Reserve Batch Proof, and then lastly that Old Forester 1924, which sounds amazing. I hope I can get my hands on that. So as we drink through the world's whiskies, one glass at a time, cheers.